Right now, at this very moment, there's something happening inside your mind that will determine everything about your future. It's not your education, your background, or your current circumstances. It's not your genetics, your family history, or even your past failures. What's happening right now is far more powerful than any of those external factors. And yet most people remain completely unaware of it. Inside your mind, there's a constant stream of thoughts flowing through your consciousness. Thousands upon thousands of thoughts every single day. Most people treat these thoughts as background noise, random mental chatter that doesn't really matter. But what if I told you that these thoughts aren't just random? What if I told you that they are literally sculpting your reality, rewiring your brain and determining who you become? The truth is this: you don't just have thoughts. Your thoughts have you. They are actively programming your subconscious mind, shaping your beliefs about yourself and the world and creating the very reality you live in. This isn't motivation. This isn't positive thinking. This is neuroscience. This is the biological truth about how your brain works and how your identity is formed. Every thought you think is strengthening neural pathways in your brain. Every belief you hold is filtering what you notice in the world around you. Every mental pattern you repeat is becoming more and more automatic until it becomes part of who you are. You are literally becoming what you think, whether you realize it or not. Most people are unconsciously programming themselves for limitation, for struggle, for mediocrity. They're thinking the same thoughts they've always thought, reinforcing the same beliefs they've always held, and wondering why their life never changes. But you're about to discover the most powerful truth of human existence. When you change your thoughts, you change your brain. When you change your brain, you change your life. When you change your life, you become an entirely different person. This isn't about wishful thinking or blind optimism. This is about understanding the fundamental mechanics of how your mind creates your reality and then deliberately taking control of that process. You're about to learn how to become the architect of your own transformation. Chapter 1. The Hidden Architecture of Your Reality. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to attract success effortlessly while others struggle despite working twice as hard? Why some individuals radiate confidence while others are plagued by self-doubt? Why certain people seem to navigate life with clarity and purpose while others feel lost and overwhelmed? The answer isn't what most people think. It's not about luck, talent, or circumstances. It's about something far more fundamental: the hidden architecture of thought that operates beneath the surface of consciousness. Right now, as you're listening to these words, there's an invisible force shaping every aspect of your experience. This force determines what you notice, what you believe is possible, how you interpret events, and ultimately who you become. This force is your thinking patterns, but not just your conscious thoughts, the ones you're aware of. I'm talking about the deeper patterns, the automatic mental programs that run in the background of your mind, constantly shaping your reality without you even realizing it. Think about this for a moment. Every single day, you're exposed to millions of pieces of information. Sounds, sights, conversations, opportunities, challenges. But your conscious mind can only process a tiny fraction of this information. The rest is filtered out by your subconscious mind, which acts like a sophisticated screening system, deciding what deserves your attention and what gets ignored. But here's the crucial part. This filtering system isn't neutral. It's not randomly deciding what to show you and what to hide. Instead, it's operating based on your existing thought patterns and beliefs. If you have thoughts and beliefs that focus on problems, your mind will filter reality to show you more problems. If you have thoughts and beliefs that focus on opportunities, your mind will highlight opportunities that others completely miss. This is why two people can walk down the same street and have completely different experiences. One person whose mind is programmed with thoughts of scarcity and limitation will notice closed shops, traffic, and stress. Another person whose mind is programmed with thoughts of abundance and possibility will notice new businesses opening, interesting people and potential opportunities. Same street, same day, completely different realities. Your thoughts are not just mental events happening inside your head. They are the invisible architects of your reality. Every thought you think is like a vote for the kind of person you want to become. Every mental pattern you reinforce is like laying another brick in the foundation of your identity. Over time, these thoughts compound and crystallize into beliefs. And these beliefs become the lens through which you see yourself and the world. But here's what most people don't understand. This process is happening whether you're conscious of it or not. Whether you're deliberately choosing your thoughts or just letting them run on autopilot, they're still shaping your reality. The question isn't whether your thoughts are creating your life. The question is, are you going to take conscious control of this process, or are you going to let it happen by default? Most people are living their lives on mental autopilot. They wake up and immediately start thinking the same thoughts they thought yesterday. They replay the same worries, the same doubts, the same mental loops. They reinforce the same beliefs about themselves and their limitations. And then they wonder why their life never changes. But what if you could interrupt this process? What if you could become conscious of the thoughts that are shaping your reality and deliberately choose new ones? What if you could reprogram your mind to filter for success instead of struggle, for possibilities instead of problems, for growth instead of limitation? This isn't just possible, it's inevitable once you understand how your mind actually works. Your brain is not fixed. It's not set in stone. It's constantly changing, constantly rewiring itself based on the thoughts you think and the experiences you create. This is called neuroplasticity, and it's the reason why transformation is always possible. No matter how stuck you might feel right now, the thoughts you think today are literally rewiring your brain for tomorrow. The mental patterns you practice are becoming stronger and more automatic. The identity you hold in your mind is becoming your lived reality. This is the hidden architecture of your life. And once you understand it, everything changes. But first, you need to see how deep this programming goes. You need to understand that the thoughts you think you're choosing might not actually be your own thoughts at all. They might be inherited patterns installed in your mind long before you had the awareness to question them. Chapter 2. The Programming You Never Chose. Right now, as you're listening to this, there are programs running in your mind that you never consciously installed. These programs are determining how you see yourself, what you believe is possible for your life, and how you respond to challenges and opportunities. They're shaping your emotions, your decisions, and your actions in ways you're not even aware of. These programs weren't created by you. They were installed in your mind by your environment, your experiences, and the people around you long before you had the critical thinking skills to evaluate whether they were true or helpful. And most people live their entire lives being controlled by these inherited programs, never realizing that they have the power to rewrite them. Think about a computer for a moment. When you buy a computer, it comes with pre-installed software. Some of this software is helpful and serves you well, but some of it might be outdated, buggy, or completely unnecessary. The difference is, with a computer, you can easily see what programs are running and choose to uninstall the ones you don't want. But with your mind, these programs are invisible, running in the background, influencing everything you do without you even knowing they're there. From the moment you were born, your mind began absorbing information about how the world works. As a child, your brain was in a state of incredible receptivity, soaking up everything around you like a sponge. You absorbed not just the words that people spoke to you, but their emotions, their beliefs, their attitudes, and their limitations. You absorbed the energy of your environment, the spoken and unspoken rules about what was possible and what wasn't. If you grew up in an environment where people said things like money doesn't grow on trees, or life is hard, or don't get your hopes up, your young mind absorbed these as fundamental truths about reality. If you were told you're not smart enough, or you're too sensitive, or you're not athletic, these statements became part of your self-concept, whether they were actually true or not. But it wasn't just the direct messages that programmed your mind. It was also what you observed. If you saw the adults around you struggling with money, your subconscious mind absorbed the program that money is scarce and difficult to obtain. If you witnessed conflict and stress in relationships, you absorbed patterns about how relationships work. If you saw people playing small, avoiding risks, and settling for less than they wanted, you absorbed those patterns, too. By the time you reached adulthood, your subconscious mind had been filled with thousands of these inherited programs. Some of them serve you well, but many of them are limitations that don't belong to you. They're not based on your actual capabilities or your true potential. They're based on the experiences, fears, and limitations of other people. The problem is most people never question these programs. They assume that the way they think and feel about themselves is just their natural personality. They believe that their fears, their doubts, and their limitations are simply part of who they are. They don't realize that these are learned patterns that can be unlearned and replaced with something better. Here's a perfect example. Many people have a deep unconscious fear of success. This might sound strange because consciously everyone wants to succeed. But subconsciously they might have absorbed messages that success is dangerous, that it makes you arrogant, that it separates you from others, or that you don't deserve it. These subconscious programs will sabotage their efforts every time they get close to achieving something significant. Or consider the program around self-worth. Many people have an unconscious belief that they need to earn love and approval through achievement, perfection, or people-pleasing. This program drives them to work themselves to exhaustion, never feeling good enough, always seeking external validation. They don't realize that this desperate need for approval is not their natural state. It's a program that was installed when they were young and vulnerable. The most insidious part of these inherited programs is that they feel true. They feel like your own thoughts and beliefs because you've been thinking them for so long. But the truth is, many of your deepest beliefs about yourself and your life were not chosen by you. They were absorbed from your environment before you had the wisdom to evaluate them. This is why positive thinking alone doesn't work for most people. You can't just think positive thoughts on top of negative programming and expect lasting change. It's like trying to run new software on an operating system that's corrupted. The new software will keep crashing because the underlying system is incompatible. Real transformation requires going deeper. It requires identifying these inherited programs, questioning their validity, and consciously choosing to install new ones that actually serve your highest potential. It requires recognizing that you are not your programming. You are the consciousness that can observe your programming and choose to change it. The beautiful truth is that every single program in your mind can be rewritten. The same neuroplasticity that allowed these patterns to be installed in the first place can be used to create entirely new patterns. You can literally rewire your brain to support the life you actually want instead of the life your conditioning thinks you deserve. But first, you need to become aware of what's running in the background of your mind. You need to start catching these automatic thoughts and questioning where they came from. You need to ask yourself, is this thought actually true? Is this belief serving me? Is this pattern moving me toward my goals or away from them? Most importantly, you need to realize that you have a choice. You are not condemned to live with the programming you inherited. You are not stuck with the thoughts and beliefs that were installed in your mind before you knew better. You have the power to become the programmer of your own consciousness. Chapter 3. The Science of Mental Transformation. What I'm about to share with you will fundamentally change how you see your own potential for transformation. For decades, scientists believed that the human brain was fixed after a certain age. They thought that once you reached adulthood, your neural pathways were set in stone and significant change was impossible. This belief kept millions of people trapped in patterns they thought they could never escape. But then neuroscientists made one of the most revolutionary discoveries in the history of brain research: neuroplasticity. They discovered that the human brain is not fixed at all. It's constantly changing, constantly rewiring itself, constantly creating new neural pathways based on your thoughts, experiences, and behaviors. This discovery didn't just change neuroscience. It changed everything we know about human potential. Your brain is not like a computer with hardware that can't be modified. It's more like a garden that's constantly growing, changing, and adapting based on what you plant and how you tend to it. Every single thought you think is like planting a seed. Every mental pattern you repeat is like watering that seed. Over time, these thoughts grow into beliefs. These beliefs shape your emotions, and these emotions drive your actions. But here's the most important part. This process is happening all the time. Whether you're conscious of it or not, right now as you're listening to these words, your brain is literally changing. New neural connections are being formed. Existing pathways are being strengthened or weakened based on where you're directing your attention and what you're choosing to think about. This means that transformation isn't just possible, it's inevitable. You cannot think the same thoughts without your brain becoming more efficient at thinking those thoughts. You cannot repeat the same mental patterns without those patterns becoming more automatic. The question isn't whether your brain will change. The question is, will it change in the direction you want, or will it change by default? Let me explain exactly how this works. Every thought you think creates a specific pattern of electrical activity in your brain. When you think the same thought repeatedly, the neural pathways associated with that thought become stronger and more established. It's like walking through a field. The first time you walk across the field, you have to push through tall grass and brush. But if you walk the same path every day, eventually you create a clear, easy-to-follow trail. Your thoughts work the same way. The first time you think a new thought, it requires effort and conscious intention. But the more you think that thought, the easier it becomes until eventually it's automatic. This is why changing your thinking patterns can feel difficult at first. You're literally having to forge new neural pathways while the old ones are still there, still strong, still trying to pull you back into familiar patterns. But here's the incredible part. The brain is incredibly efficient at rewiring itself when you know how to work with it instead of against it. The key is understanding the three fundamental principles of neuroplasticity: repetition, emotional intensity, and focused attention. Repetition is the foundation of all neural rewiring. Your brain strengthens whatever you practice most often. If you practice thinking thoughts of limitation and fear, you get better at limitation and fear. If you practice thinking thoughts of possibility and confidence, you get better at possibility and confidence. It's that simple and that powerful. But repetition alone isn't enough. The second principle is emotional intensity. Your brain pays special attention to experiences that are emotionally charged. This is why traumatic experiences can create instant long-lasting changes in your thinking patterns while neutral experiences often have little impact. The good news is that you can use this principle deliberately. When you combine new thoughts with positive emotions like excitement, gratitude, or determination, your brain rewires much faster. The third principle is focused attention. Your brain changes most rapidly when you're fully present and concentrated on what you're doing. This is why mindless repetition of affirmations often doesn't work. While deeply focused visualization and meditation can create profound shifts in a relatively short time. When you combine all three principles, repetition, emotional intensity, and focused attention, you create the perfect conditions for rapid neural rewiring. You're essentially giving your brain clear instructions about how you want it to change and then providing the optimal environment for that change to occur. Scientists have documented incredible examples of neuroplasticity in action. Stroke patients who have lost the ability to speak or move have rewired their brains to regain these functions by creating entirely new neural pathways. Taxi drivers in London who must memorize thousands of streets actually develop larger hippocampus regions in their brains. Musicians who practice intensively show dramatic changes in the areas of their brains responsible for fine motor control. But you don't need to be recovering from a stroke or learning to play the violin to harness the power of neuroplasticity. You can use these same principles to rewire your brain for confidence instead of self-doubt, for abundance instead of scarcity, for possibility instead of limitation. The most exciting part of this research is the discovery that you can literally think your way into a new identity. When you consistently think thoughts that align with the person you want to become, your brain begins to wire itself to support that identity. Your neural patterns start to match your desired self-image. Your brain begins to filter reality in ways that support your new identity rather than your old one. This is why affirmations work when they're done correctly. It's not about magical thinking or positive energy. It's about systematically rewiring your brain to support new thought patterns and new beliefs about yourself. When you repeatedly affirm, "I am confident," while feeling confident and focusing intently on that identity, you're literally building the neural pathways of confidence. The same principle applies to visualization. When you vividly imagine yourself succeeding, achieving your goals, and embodying your ideal self, your brain cannot tell the difference between the imagined experience and reality. The same neural pathways fire. The same changes occur. You're essentially practicing being the person you want to become, and your brain is rewiring itself to make that identity more natural and automatic. This scientific understanding changes everything about personal development. It means that you're not trying to fight against your nature or overcome some fixed aspect of your personality. You're simply using the natural plasticity of your brain to create the mental patterns that will serve you best. The old you isn't trying to hold you back out of malice. The old patterns aren't trying to sabotage you. They're simply the result of previous programming, and they can be reprogrammed just as easily as they were originally programmed. You have the power to become the architect of your own consciousness. Chapter 4. The Identity Creation Process. There's a profound truth that most people never discover. You don't just have an identity. You are constantly creating your identity through the thoughts you choose to think. Every moment of every day, you're either reinforcing who you've been or building who you're becoming. Most people think their identity is fixed, something they discovered about themselves. But the reality is far more empowering. Your identity is something you actively construct. Right now you have a story about who you are. This story includes beliefs about your capabilities, your worth, your potential, and your limitations. You might think of yourself as confident or insecure, successful or struggling, creative or logical, outgoing or introverted. These labels feel true because you've been thinking thoughts that support them for so long that they've become automatic. But here's what changes everything. These identity labels are not facts about you. They're simply mental habits that you've reinforced through repetition. And because they're habits, they can be changed. You can literally think yourself into a new identity by consistently choosing thoughts that align with who you want to become instead of who you've been. The process of identity creation happens through what psychologists call identity-based thinking. This is when you start making decisions and thinking thoughts based on the identity you want to embody rather than identity you currently have. Instead of thinking "I want to be confident," you start thinking "I am confident." So what would a confident person do in this situation? This shift is subtle but incredibly powerful. When you think from your desired identity instead of toward it, you start training your brain to operate from that new perspective. You begin to notice different things, feel different emotions, and take different actions. Over time, this new way of thinking becomes natural, and the identity you are practicing becomes who you actually are. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine someone who sees themselves as not a morning person. Every morning they hit the snooze button multiple times, drag themselves out of bed, and start their day feeling behind and stressed. They reinforce this identity by telling themselves and others, "I'm just not a morning person." Whenever the topic comes up. But what if this person decided to create a new identity as someone who springs out of bed energized and ready to tackle the day? They would start by thinking different thoughts. "I am someone who wakes up refreshed and excited about the day ahead." They would visualize themselves jumping out of bed with enthusiasm. They would make decisions throughout the day that support this new identity, like going to bed earlier and preparing for the morning the night before. At first, this new identity would feel forced and unnatural. The old neural pathways would still be strong and the old identity would feel more real. But through consistent practice, the new identity would gradually become stronger. The person would start to actually experience more energy in the morning. They would begin to look forward to waking up. Eventually, being a morning person would feel as natural and true as not being a morning person once did. This same process works for any aspect of identity. You can think yourself into being more confident, more creative, more disciplined, more successful, or more loving. The key is understanding that identity is not something you discover about yourself. It's something you decide about yourself and then consistently practice until it becomes automatic. The most successful people in the world, whether they realize it or not, are masters of identity creation. They don't just set goals and work toward them. They first decide who they need to become to achieve those goals, and then they start thinking and acting from that identity immediately. They don't wait until they achieve success to think like a successful person. They think like a successful person first, and success becomes the natural result. This is why traditional goal setting often fails. Most people focus on what they want to achieve without considering who they need to become to achieve it. They keep thinking the same thoughts and maintaining the same identity while expecting different results. But your external results will always be consistent with your internal identity. If you want to change your results, you have to change your identity first. The beautiful thing about identity creation is that you don't need permission from anyone else to start. You don't need to wait until you feel ready or until your circumstances change. You can begin thinking from your new identity right now in this moment. You can start asking yourself, what would the person I want to become think about this situation? How would they feel? What would they do? At first, you might not know the answers to these questions. That's perfectly normal. You're creating a new identity, not accessing an existing one. The answers will become clearer as you practice thinking from this new perspective. Your brain will start to generate thoughts, feelings, and ideas that are consistent with your chosen identity. The process becomes even more powerful when you combine identity-based thinking with visualization and affirmation. Instead of just saying "I am confident," you can visualize yourself moving through the world with confidence, feeling the emotions of confidence and receiving the responses that confident people receive. You're not just affirming an identity. You're experiencing it in your mind. Remember, your brain doesn't distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and real ones. When you mentally rehearse being the person you want to become, you're actually practicing that identity at a neurological level. You're building the neural pathways that will make that identity feel natural and automatic. The key to successful identity creation is consistency and patience. You're literally rewiring decades of neural programming, and that takes time. There will be moments when your old identity feels stronger and more real than your new one. This is normal and expected. The old neural pathways are still there, and they'll try to pull you back into familiar patterns. But every time you choose to think from your new identity instead of your old one, you're strengthening the new pathways and weakening the old ones. Every time you catch yourself thinking an old thought and consciously choose a new one, you're practicing the skill of identity creation. Eventually, thinking from your new identity will become as automatic as thinking from your old one ever was. The most empowering realization is that you are not stuck with the identity you've had up until now. You are not limited by your past experiences, your current circumstances, or other people's opinions of who you are. You have the power to consciously create any identity you choose, and your brain will rewire itself to support that new identity. You become what you think, not because of some mystical law of attraction, but because of the very real and scientifically proven process of neuroplasticity and identity creation. When you consistently think thoughts that align with your desired identity, your brain literally reshapes itself to make that identity your lived reality. Chapter 5. Breaking Free from Mental Prisons. There's an invisible prison that holds more people captive than any physical jail ever could. It has no bars, no walls, and no guards. Yet, it's more restrictive than the most secure penitentiary. This prison is built entirely from thoughts. And most of its prisoners don't even realize they're trapped. They mistake the walls of their mental prison for the boundaries of reality itself. Every limiting belief you hold, every fear that stops you from taking action, every voice in your head that says you can't do that or that's not for people like you, is a bar in this invisible prison. These mental barriers feel absolutely real because you've been living with them for so long that you can't imagine life without them. But the shocking truth is that most of these limitations exist only in your mind. Think about this for a moment. Right now, there are probably things you believe you cannot do. Goals you think are impossible for you and dreams you've given up on because they seem unrealistic. But what if I told you that many of these limitations are not based on actual impossibility? What if they're based on inherited programming, past experiences that no longer apply, or simply thoughts you've repeated so often that they feel true? The most tragic part of mental imprisonment is that the prisoners often become their own guards. They police their own thoughts, shut down their own dreams, and talk themselves out of opportunities before anyone else even has a chance to say no. They've internalized the voices of limitation so completely that they do the work of restriction for free. Here's how this prison gets built. From early childhood, you receive thousands of messages about what's possible and what isn't. Some of these messages are direct. Don't get your hopes up. Money doesn't grow on trees. People like us don't do things like that. Others are indirect, communicated through the examples you see around you. If you rarely see people achieving big dreams, your mind concludes that big dreams must be unrealistic. Over time, these messages accumulate and crystallize into what psychologists call limiting beliefs. These beliefs operate like invisible barriers, preventing you from even considering certain possibilities. They don't just stop you from taking action. They stop you from thinking thoughts that could lead to action. They create a mental box that feels like the entire universe. But here's the key insight that can set you free. These limiting beliefs are not facts about reality. They're simply thoughts you've thought so many times that they feel true. And because they're thoughts, they can be changed. The prison exists only in your mind, which means you hold the key to your own freedom. The first step in breaking free is recognition. You have to become aware of the limiting beliefs that are running your life. This requires paying attention to your internal dialogue, especially the thoughts that come up when you consider pursuing something important to you. Notice the voice that says, "That's impossible. You're not qualified. Who do you think you are?" Or, "That never works out for people like you." These thoughts might feel like practical wisdom or realistic assessment, but they're actually just old programming trying to keep you in familiar territory. Your mind is designed to prioritize safety over growth, certainty over possibility. It would rather keep you in a small known world than risk the uncertainty of expansion. But this protective mechanism which served you as a child becomes a limitation as an adult. Once you identify these limiting beliefs, the next step is to challenge their validity. Ask yourself, is this actually true, or is it just something I've been told or learned to believe? Where did this belief come from? Is it based on facts or on fear? Is this belief helping me grow, or is it keeping me small? Most limiting beliefs crumble under examination because they're not based on current reality. They're based on outdated information, other people's limitations, or isolated experiences that have been generalized into universal truths. When you really examine them, you often discover that they're not nearly as solid as they seemed. The third step is replacement. You can't just remove a limiting belief and leave a vacuum. You have to replace it with a new empowering belief that serves your growth. If you've been thinking, "I'm not smart enough to start my own business," you might replace it with, "I am capable of learning whatever I need to know to succeed." If you've been thinking, "I always fail at relationships," you might replace it with, "I am learning and growing in my ability to create loving connections." The key to successful belief replacement is making the new belief feel emotionally real. You can't just intellectually decide to believe something new. You have to feel it, visualize it, and experience it in your imagination until your subconscious mind accepts it as truth. This is where the power of mental rehearsal becomes crucial. Mental rehearsal is the practice of vividly imagining yourself succeeding, achieving your goals, and embodying your new beliefs. When you do this consistently, your brain begins to wire itself for success instead of limitation. You're literally practicing being free from your mental prison. And your mind starts to accept freedom as the new normal. But breaking free from mental prisons requires more than just changing beliefs. It requires changing your entire relationship with your thoughts. Instead of accepting every thought as truth, you learn to observe your thoughts objectively. You realize that you are not your thoughts. You are the consciousness that observes thoughts. This shift in perspective is incredibly liberating because it means you're no longer at the mercy of your mental conditioning. When you truly understand that thoughts are just mental events, not absolute truths, you gain the power to choose which thoughts to accept and which to reject. You become the gatekeeper of your own consciousness. You realize that you don't have to believe every thought your mind generates, and you don't have to act on every feeling that arises. This is the moment when true freedom begins. When you recognize that you are not trapped by your circumstances, your past, or your programming, you are only trapped by your thoughts about these things. And thoughts can be changed. Always. The process of breaking free is not always easy, and it's not always comfortable. Your mind will resist change because change represents uncertainty, and uncertainty feels dangerous to the survival-oriented parts of your brain. There will be moments when the old patterns feel stronger and more real than the new ones you're trying to create. But every time you choose a new thought over an old one, every time you question a limiting belief instead of accepting it, every time you act in spite of fear instead of because of it, you're literally rewiring your brain for freedom. You're proving to yourself that the prison walls were never real, that the limitations were never absolute, and that you have far more power than you ever imagined. The ultimate realization is this: you were never actually limited in the first place. You were simply conditioned to believe in limitation. The moment you stop believing in the walls of your mental prison, they disappear. The moment you stop accepting thoughts of limitation as truth, they lose their power over you. The moment you realize that you become what you think, you gain the power to think yourself into any reality you choose to create. Chapter 6. The Power of Thought Selection. Every single moment of your life, you're faced with a choice that will determine your future. Which thoughts will you accept and which will you reject? Most people never realize they have this choice. They treat their thoughts like weather, something that happens to them beyond their control. But the truth is, you have far more power over your thoughts than you realize. And learning to exercise this power is the key to transforming your entire life. Your mind generates thousands of thoughts every day. Some of these thoughts serve you, moving you toward your goals and reinforcing the identity you want to create. Others work against you, reinforcing old patterns and keeping you stuck in limitation. The difference between people who transform their lives and those who remain stuck isn't the quality of thoughts their minds generate. It's their ability to consciously select which thoughts to feed and which to starve. Think of your mind like a garden. In any garden, you'll find both flowers and weeds growing naturally. The flowers represent empowering thoughts that help you grow. The weeds represent limiting thoughts that choke out your potential. A skilled gardener doesn't waste time being upset that weeds exist. They simply pull them out and focus their energy on nurturing the flowers. Your mind works the same way. The first step in thought selection is developing awareness. Most people are completely unconscious of their thinking patterns. Thoughts arise automatically and they accept them without question. But when you develop the ability to observe your thoughts objectively, you gain the power to choose which ones deserve your attention and which ones should be dismissed. This process begins with what psychologists call metacognition. Thinking about thinking. Instead of being caught up in the content of your thoughts, you step back and observe the thinking process itself. You notice when your mind generates a limiting thought, and instead of automatically believing it, you pause and ask, is this thought helpful? Does it move me toward my goals or away from them? Is it based on truth or on fear? When you catch yourself thinking a thought that doesn't serve you, you don't need to fight it or suppress it. Fighting thoughts only makes them stronger. Instead, you simply acknowledge the thought and then consciously choose to redirect your attention to a thought that better serves your goals. It's like changing the channel on a radio. You don't destroy the station you don't want to hear. You simply tune into a different frequency. For example, if you catch yourself thinking, "I'm not good enough for this opportunity," you might acknowledge that thought and then consciously choose to think, "I am learning and growing, and I'm exactly where I need to be to take the next step." You're not denying reality or engaging in wishful thinking. You're choosing to focus on thoughts that empower you rather than thoughts that diminish you. The key to effective thought selection is having a clear vision of who you want to become. When you know the identity you're trying to create, it becomes much easier to evaluate whether a thought supports that identity or undermines it. Every thought becomes either a vote for your desired future self or a vote for your old patterns. The choice is always yours. This process requires practice and patience. You've been thinking automatically for so long that conscious thought selection will feel strange at first. Your mind will resist this new level of awareness because it threatens the old patterns that have been running automatically. But every time you choose an empowering thought over a limiting one, you're strengthening your ability to direct your own consciousness. Over time, thought selection becomes more natural and automatic. You develop an internal filtering system that naturally gravitates toward thoughts that serve your highest potential. Your mind begins to generate more empowering thoughts spontaneously because you've trained it to do so through conscious selection. You literally rewire your brain to think thoughts that support the life you want to create. The most powerful realization is that you are not your thoughts. You are the consciousness that observes thoughts and chooses which ones to accept. This understanding gives you tremendous freedom because it means you're never trapped by any particular thought or mental pattern. No matter how strong or persistent a limiting thought might be, you always have the power to observe it objectively and choose something better. Thought selection is not about positive thinking or denial of reality. It's about taking conscious control of the most powerful creative force in your life, your thinking mind. When you learn to consistently choose thoughts that align with your desired identity and goals, you discover that you truly do become what you think because you're thinking yourself into the person you want to be. Chapter 7. Rewiring your mental operating system. Your mind operates like a sophisticated computer with a mental operating system that determines how you process information, make decisions, and respond to the world around you, just like a computer's operating system. Your mental operating system was installed early in your life and has been running largely unchanged ever since. But unlike a computer, you have the power to upgrade your mental operating system at any time. Your current mental operating system was programmed by your early experiences, your environment, and the people who influenced you during your formative years. This programming determines your default responses to challenges, your automatic emotional reactions, and your unconscious beliefs about what's possible for your life. For most people, this operating system contains outdated software that no longer serves their current goals and aspirations. The problem with running on outdated mental software is that it limits your ability to process new information and adapt to new circumstances. You might have the intelligence and capability to achieve great things, but if your mental operating system is programmed for limitation, it will sabotage your efforts every time you try to exceed its programmed parameters. Rewiring your mental operating system requires understanding that most of your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are not conscious choices. They're automatic programs running in the background of your mind. These programs were installed through repetition and emotional intensity, and they can be replaced using the same methods. The first step in upgrading your mental operating system is identifying the core programs that are currently running. These programs usually reveal themselves through your automatic thoughts, your emotional patterns, and your consistent behaviors. If you consistently think thoughts of self-doubt when faced with opportunities, that's a program. If you automatically feel anxious in social situations, that's a program. If you consistently procrastinate on important tasks, that's a program. Once you identify these automatic programs, you can begin the process of conscious reprogramming. This involves deliberately installing new mental software that better serves your current goals and desired identity. The key is consistency and emotional engagement. You must practice your new mental programs with the same intensity and repetition that installed the old ones. Mental rehearsal is one of the most powerful tools for reprogramming your operating system. When you vividly imagine yourself thinking, feeling, and behaving in new ways, you're literally installing new neural software. Your brain doesn't distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and real ones. So mental practice creates the same neural changes as physical practice. For example, if you want to install a program for confidence, you would spend time each day mentally rehearsing confident thoughts, confident posture, confident speech, and confident actions. You would imagine yourself moving through various situations with complete self-assurance, feeling the emotions of confidence and receiving positive responses from others. With enough repetition, this mental rehearsal becomes your new default programming. Affirmations work as part of this reprogramming process, but only when they're done correctly. Simply repeating positive statements without emotional engagement is like trying to install software without the proper installation process. It doesn't take hold. Effective affirmations are emotionally charged, personally meaningful, and repeated consistently until they feel natural and true. The most powerful affirmations are identity-based rather than goal-based. Instead of affirming "I will be successful," you affirm "I am a successful person." Instead of "I want to be confident," you affirm "I am confident." This subtle shift programs your mind to operate from your desired identity rather than toward it. Environmental programming is another crucial aspect of mental rewiring. Your mind is constantly being influenced by the information you consume, the people you spend time with, and the environments you inhabit. If you want to install new mental programming, you must consciously curate your environment to support that programming. This means surrounding yourself with examples of the mindset you want to develop. Read books by people who embody the identity you're creating. Listen to podcasts and watch videos that reinforce your new mental programming. Spend time with people who think and act in ways that align with your desired identity. Your mind learns through observation and osmosis. So, make sure you're exposing it to the right influences. The process of mental reprogramming also requires breaking old patterns through conscious intervention. Every time you catch yourself running an old program, thinking an old thought, feeling an old emotion, or acting out an old behavior, you have an opportunity to install new software. Instead of automatically following the old program, pause and consciously choose a new response that aligns with your desired identity. This interruption of automatic patterns is crucial because it weakens the old neural pathways while strengthening new ones. Each time you choose a new response over an automatic one, you're literally rewiring your brain. Over time, these new responses become automatic, and you've successfully upgraded your mental operating system. The key to successful mental reprogramming is understanding that change happens gradually then suddenly. At first, your new programming will feel forced and unnatural because the old programs are still strong. But with consistent practice, there's a tipping point where the new programming becomes stronger than the old and your new way of thinking, feeling, and behaving becomes effortless and natural. Remember, you're not trying to fix something that's broken. You're upgrading to a more advanced version of yourself. Your mind is incredibly adaptable and capable of running any software you choose to install. The question is, what kind of mental operating system do you want to be running 1 year from now? Chapter 8. The Art of Mental Conditioning. Elite athletes understand something that most people never discover. Peak performance isn't just about physical training. It's about mental conditioning, the systematic practice of training your mind to think, feel, and respond in ways that consistently produce excellent results. What most people don't realize is that this same principle applies to every area of life. You can condition your mind for success, confidence, creativity, or any other quality you want to develop. Mental conditioning is different from positive thinking or motivation. It's not about pumping yourself up or pretending everything is fine when it isn't. It's about systematically training your mind to operate at a higher level through deliberate practice and consistent repetition. Just as physical conditioning makes your body stronger and more capable, mental conditioning makes your mind more resilient, focused, and effective. The foundation of mental conditioning is understanding that your mind, like your body, responds to training. When you consistently practice certain mental patterns, they become stronger and more automatic. When you neglect certain mental skills, they atrophy. This means you can literally train yourself to think like the most successful people in your field, to feel emotions that serve your goals, and to respond to challenges with clarity and composure. The first element of effective mental conditioning is clarity of intention. You must be absolutely clear about what mental qualities you want to develop. Vague intentions produce vague results. Instead of saying, "I want to be more confident," you define exactly what confidence looks like for you. "I want to speak up in meetings without hesitation, approach new people with ease, and take on challenging projects without self-doubt." Once you're clear on your intention, you create specific mental exercises designed to strengthen those qualities. If you want to develop unshakable confidence, you might practice confidence-building visualizations every morning. Rehearsing scenarios where you demonstrate complete self-assurance. If you want to develop laser focus, you might practice concentration exercises that train your mind to sustain attention for longer periods without distraction. The key to effective mental conditioning is treating it like physical exercise. You must be consistent, progressive, and intentional. Just as you wouldn't expect to get physically fit by exercising randomly or without effort, you can't expect to develop mental strength without committed practice. You must set aside dedicated time for mental training and approach it with the same seriousness you would bring to physical conditioning. Visualization is one of the most powerful tools in mental conditioning. When done correctly, visualization isn't just daydreaming or wishful thinking. It's systematic mental rehearsal that programs your subconscious mind for success. You create detailed mental movies of yourself performing at your best, feeling exactly how you want to feel and achieving the results you desire. The more vivid and emotionally engaging these mental rehearsals are, the more powerfully they condition your mind. Mental conditioning also involves developing what psychologists call emotional regulation, the ability to maintain optimal emotional states regardless of external circumstances. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending to feel something you don't. It means training your mind to generate and maintain emotions that serve your goals even when faced with challenges or setbacks. For example, you can condition yourself to feel excited about challenges instead of anxious. You can train your mind to interpret obstacles as opportunities for growth rather than evidence that you should quit. You can develop the ability to maintain calm confidence even in high-pressure situations. These aren't personality traits you're born with. They're mental skills you can develop through practice. Another crucial aspect of mental conditioning is developing mental resilience. The ability to bounce back quickly from setbacks and maintain forward momentum regardless of what happens. Mental resilience isn't about being tough or emotionless. It's about having a conditioned response to adversity that allows you to extract lessons, maintain perspective, and continue moving toward your goals. This resilience is developed through what psychologists call cognitive reframing, the practice of consciously choosing empowering interpretations of events. Instead of automatically seeing failures as evidence of your inadequacy, you train your mind to see them as valuable feedback and learning opportunities. Instead of viewing challenges as threats, you condition yourself to see them as chances to grow stronger and more capable. The most advanced form of mental conditioning involves training your mind to enter peak performance states at will. These are states of consciousness where you feel completely focused, confident, and capable. Elite performers in every field have learned to access these states consistently through specific mental triggers and conditioning practices. You can develop your own peak performance triggers through consistent practice. This might involve specific breathing patterns, particular phrases you repeat to yourself, or mental images that instantly shift your state. The key is practicing these triggers when you're already in a peak state. So, your mind learns to associate the trigger with the desired mental and emotional condition. Mental conditioning also requires what athletes call pressure training. Deliberately practicing your mental skills under challenging conditions. It's easy to maintain confidence and focus when everything is going well. But true mental conditioning means being able to access your best mental state even when facing pressure, criticism, or uncertainty. The beautiful truth about mental conditioning is that it compounds over time. Each day you practice, you're not just improving for that day. You're building mental strength that will serve you for years to come. Your mind becomes more naturally inclined toward the states and patterns you've been conditioning until excellence becomes your default rather than something you have to work to achieve. Remember, every thought you think is either conditioning your mind for limitation or conditioning it for excellence. The choice is always yours and the results are always inevitable. When you approach mental conditioning with the same dedication and consistency that elite athletes bring to physical training, you develop a mind that becomes your greatest asset in achieving any goal you set. Chapter 9. Breaking the Cycle of Automatic Thinking. Right now, as you're listening to these words, there's a constant stream of thoughts flowing through your consciousness. Most of these thoughts are completely automatic, arising without your conscious intention, following familiar patterns that have been established over years or even decades. These automatic thoughts are like mental habits. And just like any habit, they can either serve you or limit you. The problem is most people never realize they have the power to break the cycle of automatic thinking and consciously choose their mental patterns. Automatic thinking develops because your brain is designed for efficiency. It doesn't want to use conscious energy to think about every little thing. So it creates mental shortcuts, automatic patterns that allow you to navigate familiar situations without conscious effort. This is incredibly useful for basic tasks like driving a familiar route or performing routine activities. But when these automatic patterns are negative or limiting, they become mental prisons that keep you stuck in old realities. The cycle of automatic thinking works like this. A situation triggers an automatic thought which generates an emotion which drives a behavior which reinforces the original thought pattern. For example, you might automatically think I'm not good at public speaking when asked to give a presentation. This thought generates anxiety which causes you to avoid speaking opportunities which reinforces your belief that you're not good at it. The cycle becomes self-perpetuating and self-fulfilling. Most people are completely unconscious of these automatic cycles. They experience the emotions and behaviors without realizing they originated from automatic thoughts that could be questioned and changed. They assume their reactions are just part of their personality or natural responses to situations, never recognizing that they're actually responses to thoughts that happen so quickly they barely register in consciousness. Breaking free from automatic thinking begins with developing what meditation teachers call mindful awareness. The ability to observe your thoughts as they arise without immediately being carried away by them. This is not about suppressing thoughts or judging them as good or bad. It's about creating a small space between you and your thoughts so you can observe them objectively rather than automatically believing and acting on them. The first step in developing this awareness is simply noticing when you're thinking automatically versus when you're thinking consciously. Automatic thoughts usually feel urgent, emotional, and unquestionable. They arise quickly and demand immediate belief and action. Conscious thoughts, on the other hand, feel more deliberate, calm, and open to examination. They arise from choice rather than habit. Once you develop the ability to notice automatic thoughts, you can begin questioning them. This doesn't mean arguing with your thoughts or trying to convince yourself they're wrong. It means approaching them with gentle curiosity. Is this thought actually true? Where did this thought come from? Is this thought helping me or limiting me? What would I think about this situation if I were thinking consciously rather than automatically? This questioning process is incredibly powerful because it interrupts the automatic cycle. Instead of thought leading directly to emotion, to behavior, you insert a moment of conscious evaluation. This brief pause is all you need to choose a different thought which will generate a different emotion and lead to a different behavior. The most effective way to break automatic thinking patterns is to replace them with consciously chosen thoughts. You can't just remove an automatic thought and leave empty space. Nature abhors a vacuum, and your mind will fill that space with another automatic thought. Instead, you must consciously install new thought patterns that serve your goals and desired identity. This installation process requires repetition and emotional engagement. When you catch yourself thinking an automatic limiting thought, you consciously choose a more empowering thought and focus on it with intention and feeling. For example, if you catch yourself automatically thinking, "I always mess things up," you might consciously choose to think, "I am learning and improving with every experience." The key is not just thinking the new thought, but feeling it and believing it with emotional intensity. One of the most powerful techniques for breaking automatic thinking is what psychologists call thought stopping. When you notice an automatic thought pattern beginning, you mentally say stop and immediately redirect your attention to something else, a chosen thought, a physical sensation, or an external focus. This technique trains your mind to interrupt automatic patterns before they gain momentum. Another effective approach is pattern interruption. Deliberately doing something unexpected when you notice automatic thinking taking over. This might be changing your physical position, taking deep breaths, or asking yourself a completely different question. The goal is to break the automatic flow and create space for conscious choice. The most advanced practitioners of conscious thinking develop what could be called thought awareness, the ability to observe the arising of thoughts in real time and choose whether to engage with them or not. They develop a kind of internal witness that watches the thinking process without being caught up in it. This level of awareness gives them tremendous freedom because they're no longer at the mercy of whatever thoughts happen to arise. Breaking the cycle of automatic thinking also requires understanding that thoughts are not facts. They're just mental events that arise and pass away. You don't have to believe every thought your mind generates. And you don't have to act on every impulse that arises. You can observe thoughts objectively, evaluate their usefulness, and choose which ones deserve your attention and energy. This process takes practice and patience. You've been thinking automatically for so long that conscious thinking will feel unnatural at first. Your mind will resist this new level of awareness because it threatens the efficiency of automatic processing. But every time you choose conscious thought over automatic reaction, you're strengthening your ability to direct your own consciousness. The ultimate goal is not to eliminate all automatic thinking. That would be impossible and unnecessary. The goal is to ensure that your automatic thoughts serve your highest potential rather than limiting it. When you consistently practice conscious thinking, your mind begins to generate more empowering automatic thoughts. Your default mental patterns shift from limitation to possibility, from fear to confidence, from reaction to conscious response. Remember, you are not your thoughts. You are the consciousness that has the power to observe thoughts, evaluate them, and choose which ones to accept. This understanding is the key to breaking free from any mental pattern that doesn't serve you and consciously creating the mental patterns that will transform your life. Chapter 10. The compound effect of conscious thinking. Most people dramatically underestimate the power of a single thought. They treat thoughts as ephemeral mental events that come and go without consequence. But the truth is, every thought you think has a compound effect. It doesn't just influence the present moment. It shapes your future by literally rewiring your brain and creating momentum in a particular direction. Understanding the compound effect of conscious thinking is crucial because it reveals why small changes in your thinking patterns can produce extraordinary transformations over time. The compound effect works the same way with thoughts as it does with money. When you invest money and earn compound interest, the returns don't just add up, they multiply, creating exponential growth over time. A small investment today becomes a large fortune decades later because each year's returns generate even more returns. Your thoughts work exactly the same way. Each thought strengthens neural pathways, influences your emotions, affects your decisions, and shapes your actions. These effects compound over time, creating massive changes from seemingly small beginnings. Here's how the compound effect of thinking works. When you think a thought once, it creates a weak neural pathway in your brain. When you think the same thought again, that pathway becomes slightly stronger. Each repetition makes the pathway more established until eventually the thought becomes automatic and effortless. But the effect doesn't stop there. As the thought becomes more automatic, it influences your emotions more consistently. As your emotions change, your behaviors change. As your behaviors change, your results change. As your results change, your identity changes. One thought repeated consistently can literally transform who you are. The same process works in reverse with negative thoughts. Each time you think a limiting or destructive thought, you're strengthening neural pathways that make that type of thinking more automatic. Over time, negative thinking compounds into pessimistic emotions, self-defeating behaviors, poor results, and a diminished sense of self. This is why people can spiral downward so quickly when they get caught in negative thinking patterns. The compound effect works against them. The key insight is that the compound effect makes small changes incredibly powerful over time. You don't need to completely transform your thinking overnight. You just need to make small consistent improvements in the quality of your thoughts, and the compound effect will do the rest. One slightly more empowering thought repeated daily can change the entire trajectory of your life. This is why awareness of your thinking patterns is so crucial. Every moment you're either contributing to positive compound growth or negative compound growth. There's no neutral ground. Your thoughts are always moving you in one direction or the other. When you become conscious of this process, you gain the power to deliberately steer the compound effect in your favor. The most successful people in every field understand the compound effect of thinking, whether they call it that or not. They know that their current thoughts are creating their future reality. So, they guard their mental space carefully. They consistently choose thoughts that compound into confidence, optimism, creativity, and success. They understand that thinking is not just something that happens to them. It's the most important investment they can make in their future. To harness the compound effect of conscious thinking, you must first identify the key areas where your thoughts have the greatest impact on your life. These are usually areas related to your self-image, your beliefs about what's possible, your interpretation of challenges and setbacks, and your vision of your future. Small improvements in thinking in these areas compound into massive life changes. For example, if you've been thinking, "I'm not good with money," and you start consciously thinking, "I'm learning to be excellent with money." This small shift compounds over time. First, the new thought makes you more open to financial education. This leads to better financial decisions. Better decisions lead to better results. Better results reinforce your new identity as someone who's good with money. Eventually, the compound effect transforms not just your finances, but your entire relationship with abundance and prosperity. The compound effect is accelerated when you combine conscious thinking with emotional intensity and visualization. When you think empowering thoughts with strong emotion and vivid mental imagery, you create much stronger neural pathways much more quickly. This is why the most powerful manifestations happen when people combine clear thinking, intense emotion, and detailed visualization. They're maximizing the compound effect of their mental energy. Consistency is absolutely crucial for the compound effect to work in your favor. Thinking empowering thoughts occasionally doesn't create lasting change because the compound effect requires repetition over time. You must think your new thoughts consistently even when you don't feel like it, even when the old thoughts seem easier or more natural. The compound effect rewards consistency above intensity. This is also why it's important to be patient with the process. Just as financial compound interest seems to work slowly at first and then accelerates dramatically, the compound effect of thinking often appears to work slowly initially. You might not see dramatic changes in the first weeks or even months of conscious thinking, but if you stay consistent, there will come a point where the changes accelerate rapidly, and you'll be amazed at how different your life becomes. The compound effect also explains why some people seem to have overnight success while others struggle for years. The people who appear to succeed overnight have usually been compound, thinking their way to success for years before anyone noticed. They've been consistently thinking thoughts of possibility, capability, and success until those thoughts compound into undeniable reality. Understanding the compound effect should also motivate you to eliminate toxic thinking patterns as quickly as possible. Just as positive thoughts compound into positive results, negative thoughts compound into negative outcomes. The sooner you interrupt negative compound cycles, the easier it is to redirect your mental energy toward positive compound growth. The most empowering realization about the compound effect is that it's never too late to start. No matter how long you've been thinking in limiting ways, you can begin the compound effect of empowering thinking right now. Your brain is constantly rewiring itself, which means positive changes can begin immediately and compound from this moment forward. Every thought you choose to think is an investment in your future self. The question is, are you investing in the compound growth of limitation and struggle or in the compound growth of possibility and success? The choice is always yours, and the compound effect ensures that your choice today will determine who you become tomorrow. Chapter 11. The Reality Creation Protocol. There exists a systematic process for transforming thoughts into tangible reality. And once you understand this process, you gain the power to consciously create any life you can envision. This isn't mystical thinking or wishful hoping. This is a practical protocol based on how your brain processes information and translates mental patterns into physical actions and results. The Reality Creation Protocol operates on a simple but profound principle. Your external world will always mirror your internal world given enough time and consistency. Your thoughts create your beliefs. Your beliefs shape your emotions. Your emotions drive your actions, and your actions produce your results. Most people experience this process unconsciously, which is why their external reality often feels random or beyond their control. But when you understand and apply this protocol consciously, you become the deliberate architect of your own life. The first phase of the Reality Creation Protocol is mental design. This is where you create a clear, detailed mental blueprint of the reality you want to experience. Most people skip this crucial step, which is why their efforts to change their lives often fail. You cannot create what you cannot clearly envision. Your subconscious mind needs specific instructions about what to create, and these instructions come through vivid, emotionally charged mental imagery. Mental design involves more than just setting goals or making vision boards. It requires you to mentally experience your desired reality in complete detail. Not just what you'll have, but who you'll be, how you'll feel, how you'll spend your days, how others will respond to you, and what your internal experience will be like. The more sensory detail you include in your mental design, the more real it becomes to your subconscious mind. The second phase is neural installation. This is where you systematically program your brain to support your desired reality through repetition, emotion, and focused attention. Your brain doesn't distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and real ones. So when you repeatedly visualize your desired reality with intense emotion and complete focus, you're literally training your brain to make that reality feel natural and inevitable. Neural installation requires daily practice, preferably at times when your brain is most receptive, typically first thing in the morning and last thing at night. During these sessions, you don't just think about your desired reality. You experience it mentally. You feel the emotions you would feel. You see through the eyes of your future self. You embody the identity of the person who has already achieved what you're working toward. The third phase is identity alignment. Your actions will always be consistent with your identity. So if you want to create a new reality, you must first become the person who would naturally create that reality. This means identifying the thoughts, beliefs, values, and habits of your desired identity and beginning to embody them immediately before you see external evidence of change. Identity alignment is about acting from your desired identity rather than toward it. Instead of thinking, when I'm successful, I'll be confident, You start thinking and acting confidently now because that's who you are in your desired reality. This shift in identity creates massive changes in your behavior because you're no longer trying to become someone else. You're simply being yourself, your evolved self. The fourth phase is reality bridging. This is where you begin taking physical actions that bridge the gap between your current reality and your desired reality. These actions are guided by your new identity and informed by your mental design. You start making decisions, forming relationships, and pursuing opportunities that align with your envisioned future, rather than your current circumstances. Reality bridging requires courage because it often means acting before you feel ready, investing before you see guaranteed returns, and stepping into uncertainty because your vision demands it. But when your identity is aligned with your desired reality, these actions feel natural rather than forced because they're consistent with who you believe yourself to be. The fifth phase is momentum acceleration. As you consistently apply the first four phases, you begin to see evidence that your reality is shifting. These early signs of progress create positive momentum that accelerates the entire process. Your increased confidence attracts more opportunities. Your improved results reinforce your new identity. And your growing success makes your vision feel more achievable. During the momentum acceleration phase, it's crucial to maintain focus on your desired reality rather than getting caught up in current circumstances. Your external reality will always lag behind your internal transformation. So, you must continue operating from your future identity even when your current results don't yet reflect your vision. The final phase is reality stabilization. This is where your desired reality becomes your lived reality and maintaining it becomes natural and effortless. Your new identity has become automatic. Your empowering thought patterns have become default and your external circumstances have aligned with your internal transformation. Reality stabilization doesn't mean you stop growing or evolving. It means you've successfully applied the reality creation protocol and can now use it to create even greater realities. You've proven to yourself that you truly do become what you think. And you can trust this process to create whatever you envision next. The key to successful reality creation is understanding that this is not a one-time process, but a way of living. You're always creating your reality through your thoughts, whether consciously or unconsciously. The reality creation protocol simply gives you conscious control over a process that's happening anyway. Remember, your current reality was created by your past thinking. Your future reality is being created by your current thinking. The reality creation protocol ensures that your future reality is the one you consciously choose rather than the one you create by default. Chapter 12. Mastering the Inner Game. Success in any area of life is determined more by what happens inside your mind than by external circumstances. This is what champions in every field understand, that the real competition, the real challenge and the real victory all happen in the mental realm. Mastering the inner game means developing complete command over your internal state so that regardless of what's happening around you, you can maintain the thoughts, emotions, and energy that produce excellence. The inner game operates on the principle that your external performance is always limited by your internal capacity. You cannot consistently perform at a level higher than your mental and emotional programming allows. This is why some people crumble under pressure while others thrive. Why some individuals give up at the first sign of difficulty while others persist through seemingly impossible challenges. Most people focus almost exclusively on the outer game, developing skills, acquiring knowledge, improving techniques, and working harder. While these elements are important, they pale in comparison to the inner game factors that determine whether you'll be able to apply your skills when it matters most. The inner game is about developing unshakable confidence, emotional resilience, laser focus, and the ability to maintain peak state regardless of circumstances. The foundation of inner game mastery is emotional regulation. The ability to consciously choose your emotional state rather than being controlled by whatever emotions arise automatically. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending to feel something you don't. It means understanding that emotions are largely determined by the thoughts you choose to think. And you can influence your emotional state by directing your mental focus. Emotional regulation begins with recognizing that emotions are information, not commands. When fear arises, it's providing information about a potential threat, but it's not commanding you to retreat. When anger emerges, it's highlighting something you perceive as unjust, but it's not commanding you to lash out. When you understand emotions as information rather than directives, you gain the power to feel the emotion, extract the useful information, and then choose your response consciously. The second pillar of inner game mastery is developing what psychologists call mental toughness. The ability to maintain effective functioning under pressure, adversity, and uncertainty. Mental toughness isn't about being hard or emotionless. It's about having such a strong internal foundation that external circumstances cannot shake your core confidence and clarity. Mental toughness is developed through progressive exposure to challenging situations while maintaining optimal internal state. This means deliberately putting yourself in situations that test your emotional regulation. Then practicing maintaining calm confidence regardless of what happens. Each time you successfully manage your inner state under pressure, you build evidence that you can handle whatever comes your way. Another crucial aspect of inner game mastery is developing unwavering focus. The ability to maintain complete attention on what serves your goals while filtering out everything else. In our distraction-heavy world, the ability to focus deeply is becoming a superpower. Those who can maintain sustained attention on important tasks while resisting the pull of immediate gratification have an enormous advantage. Focus is like a muscle that strengthens with practice. Every time you choose to concentrate on something important rather than something immediately gratifying, you're building your focus capacity. Every time you bring your wandering attention back to your chosen target, you're training your mind to be more disciplined and directed. The inner game also requires mastering your internal dialogue, the constant stream of self-talk that either supports your success or undermines it. Most people are completely unconscious of their internal dialogue, allowing their minds to run commentary that often works against their best interests. Mastering the inner game means taking conscious control of this internal voice and ensuring it consistently supports your highest performance. This involves developing what could be called an internal coach, a voice in your head that encourages, guides, and supports you the way an excellent external coach would. Instead of internal criticism, you develop internal encouragement. Instead of focusing on what could go wrong, your internal dialogue focuses on what you need to do to succeed. Instead of rehearsing failure, you mentally rehearse excellence. Visualization is one of the most powerful tools for inner game mastery. When you vividly imagine yourself performing at your best, handling challenges with grace, and achieving your goals with confidence, you're programming your subconscious mind for success. Your brain treats these mental rehearsals as real experiences, building the neural pathways that will support actual peak performance. The most advanced practitioners of inner game mastery develop what could be called state independence. The ability to maintain their optimal internal state regardless of external circumstances. They don't need everything to go perfectly to perform excellently. They don't need others to behave in certain ways to maintain their confidence. They don't need ideal conditions to access their best capabilities. This state independence comes from understanding that your internal state is your responsibility and your choice. You cannot control what happens around you, but you can always control what happens within you. This realization is incredibly liberating because it means your success is not dependent on circumstances aligning perfectly. It's dependent on your ability to maintain excellence internally. Mastering the inner game also involves developing what resilience researchers call post-traumatic growth. The ability to not just recover from setbacks, but to use them as catalysts for becoming stronger and more capable. Instead of seeing failures and disappointments as evidence of your limitations, you learn to see them as valuable feedback and opportunities for growth. The ultimate goal of inner game mastery is reaching what athletes call the zone. A state of consciousness where peak performance feels effortless. Where you're completely absorbed in the present moment, where self-doubt disappears and where you perform at levels that surprise even yourself. While the zone might seem like a random occurrence, it's actually a state that can be cultivated through consistent inner game practice. Remember, everyone faces the same types of challenges: fear, doubt, pressure, setbacks, and uncertainty. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't isn't the absence of these challenges. It's the mastery of the inner game that allows some people to perform excellently despite these challenges while others are defeated by them. Chapter 13. The Transformation Accelerator. There comes a point in every transformation journey where the rate of change can be dramatically accelerated. Most people never discover this acceleration point because they're focused on changing their external circumstances rather than upgrading their internal processing system. But when you understand how to optimize your mind for rapid transformation, you can achieve in months what others take years to accomplish. The Transformation Accelerator operates on the principle of leverage. Tupame, finding the points where small changes in your internal system create massive changes in your external results. Instead of working harder on changing your behaviors, you work smarter on changing the thoughts and beliefs that drive those behaviors. Instead of fighting against your patterns, you reprogram the patterns themselves. The first component of the Transformation Accelerator is what neuroscientists call state-dependent learning. The fact that you learn and change most rapidly when you're in optimal internal states. When you're feeling confident, excited, and focused, your brain is far more receptive to new information and new patterns than when you're feeling anxious, doubtful, or distracted. This means that the timing of your transformation work matters enormously. Instead of trying to reprogram your mind when you're feeling low or struggling, you strategically work on transformation when you're already feeling good. You amplify positive states and use them as launching platforms for even greater changes. The second component is pattern stacking. The practice of installing multiple empowering patterns simultaneously rather than trying to change one thing at a time. When you combine identity work, visualization, affirmations, and behavioral changes all at once, they reinforce each other and create synergistic effects that accelerate the entire process. For example, instead of just working on confidence or just working on focus, you would simultaneously develop the identity of a confident, focused person. Visualize yourself operating with confidence and focus. Affirm your natural confidence and focus and take actions that demonstrate confidence and focus. This comprehensive approach creates multiple neural pathways supporting the same transformation, making change much faster and more permanent. The third component is emotional amplification, using peak emotional states to supercharge the transformation process. Your brain pays special attention to emotionally intense experiences. So when you can generate intense positive emotions while working on transformation, you create much stronger neural pathways much more quickly. This involves learning to generate states of excitement, gratitude, love, and determination at will, then using these states as the backdrop for your transformation work. When you visualize your future self while feeling intensely grateful for that reality, or when you practice new behaviors while feeling excited about who you're becoming, you accelerate the rewiring process exponentially. The fourth component is future pulling. A technique where you mentally experience your transformed reality so vividly and consistently that it begins to pull you forward into it instead of pushing yourself to change. You create such a compelling vision of your future that you're naturally drawn toward it. Future pulling involves spending time each day living mentally in your desired reality. Not just imagining it, but experiencing it as if it's already true. You think the thoughts your future self would think, feel the emotions they would feel, and see through their eyes. This creates a magnetic pull toward that reality that makes transformation feel effortless rather than forced. The fifth component is evidence accumulation. Systematically collecting proof that your transformation is working even in small ways. Your brain is constantly looking for evidence to support its existing beliefs. So when you deliberately focus on signs of positive change, you train your brain to notice more evidence of transformation. This involves keeping a daily record of progress, no matter how small. When you catch yourself thinking a new thought, when you handle a situation differently than you would have before, when someone responds to you in a new way, you acknowledge these as evidence that your transformation is real and accelerating. The sixth component is resistance dissolution. Proactively addressing the internal resistance that slows down transformation. Instead of fighting against resistance or pretending it doesn't exist, you acknowledge it, understand it, and work with it strategically. Resistance often comes from parts of your psyche that are trying to protect you from perceived danger or loss. By understanding what your resistance is trying to protect and finding ways to honor those concerns while still moving forward, you can dissolve resistance rather than battling against it. The Transformation Accelerator also involves environmental optimization, consciously designing your environment to support rapid change. This includes the physical spaces you inhabit, the information you consume, the people you spend time with, and the activities you engage in regularly. When your environment consistently reinforces your desired transformation rather than your old patterns, change happens much more quickly. You're not fighting against environmental friction. You're being supported and encouraged by everything around you. The most powerful aspect of the Transformation Accelerator is identity momentum. Reaching the point where your new identity becomes so strong and clear that it naturally generates thoughts, emotions, and actions that support your desired reality. You're no longer trying to change. You're simply being who you are. And who you are is naturally creating the life you want. This momentum builds gradually and then reaches a tipping point where transformation becomes self-sustaining. You don't have to force yourself to think empowering thoughts because empowering thoughts have become natural. You don't have to push yourself to take positive actions because positive actions flow naturally from your new identity. The key to activating the Transformation Accelerator is understanding that transformation is not about fixing what's wrong with you. It's about optimizing what's already working. You're not broken and in need of repair. You're a powerful being learning to operate at your full capacity. When you apply these acceleration principles consistently, you'll be amazed at how quickly your life can change. What seemed impossible becomes inevitable. What felt difficult becomes natural, and what you once dreamed about becomes your lived reality. Chapter 14. Living from your future self. The most powerful transformation technique you can master is learning to live from the perspective of your future self, the person you're becoming rather than the person you've been. This isn't about pretending or playing a role. It's about accessing the consciousness, the wisdom, and the natural patterns of the evolved version of yourself and operating from that space right now before external evidence appears. Most people live from their past selves. They make decisions based on who they were yesterday. They interpret new situations through the lens of old experiences, and they predict their future based on their historical patterns. This keeps them trapped in repetitive cycles because they're constantly recreating their past rather than creating something new. Living from your future self means making decisions today from the perspective of who you're becoming. It means asking yourself, how would the person I'm evolving into handle this situation? What would they think about this challenge? How would they feel about this opportunity? What choice would they make? Then you act from that wisdom, even if it feels uncomfortable or unfamiliar. Your future self is not some fantasy version of yourself that bears no relationship to who you are now. Your future self is the natural evolution of your current potential. It's who you become when you remove the limitations, fears, and conditioning that currently constrain you. It's you operating at your full capacity with complete confidence in your worth and capabilities. The first step in accessing your future self is developing a clear relationship with this evolved version of yourself. This requires spending time in meditation or visualization, connecting with the consciousness of your future self and learning to recognize their perspective, their values, their decision-making process, and their natural way of being in the world. This connection becomes stronger when you approach your future self with genuine curiosity and respect. Instead of seeing them as someone you're trying to become, see them as a wise mentor who has already walked the path you're walking and can offer guidance from experience. Your future self has already solved the problems you're currently facing and can share that wisdom with you. Now, living from your future self requires what psychologists call temporal perspective shifting. The ability to mentally time travel and view your current situation from a future vantage point. When you're facing a challenge, you step into the consciousness of your future self who has already overcome that challenge and ask for their perspective on the situation. This shift in temporal perspective is incredibly powerful because it immediately changes your relationship to whatever you're experiencing. Problems that seem overwhelming from your current perspective often appear manageable or even beneficial from your future self's perspective. Decisions that feel impossible become clear when viewed through the wisdom of someone who has already navigated similar choices. Your future self also has a different emotional relationship to the challenges and uncertainties you're currently facing. They know that the struggle you're experiencing now is temporary and necessary for your growth. They have compassion for your current confusion or fear, but they also have confidence in your ability to navigate through it successfully. When you access this future perspective, you naturally become more patient with the process of transformation. You understand that your current discomfort or uncertainty is not evidence that something is wrong. It's evidence that you're growing. Your future self can offer comfort and encouragement during difficult periods because they know how the story ends. Living from your future self also means embodying their energy and presence in your daily interactions. Your future self moves through the world with a different quality of confidence, speaks with different authority and relates to others from a place of self-assurance rather than insecurity when you consciously embody these qualities. You begin to experience the world responding to you differently. This embodiment practice is not about fake it till you make it energy, which often feels forced and inauthentic. It's about recognizing that your future self's confidence and presence are natural expressions of who you really are beneath your current conditioning. You're not pretending to be someone else. You're accessing aspects of yourself that have always existed but have been covered by layers of limitation. One of the most practical applications of living from your future self is using their perspective for decision-making. When faced with choices, instead of asking what do I want to do, you ask what would my future self do. This subtle shift often reveals choices that serve your long-term growth, even if they're not the most comfortable options in the moment. Your future self naturally makes decisions from abundance rather than scarcity, from confidence rather than fear, from love rather than ego. They invest in long-term growth rather than short-term gratification. They choose expansion over comfort, truth over convenience, and possibility over safety. When you make decisions from this perspective, you consistently move in the direction of your highest potential. Living from your future self also transforms your relationship to setbacks and failures. Your future self knows that these apparent obstacles are actually necessary steps in your evolution. They don't see failure as evidence of inadequacy. They see it as valuable feedback and course correction. This perspective allows you to maintain forward momentum even when things don't go as planned. The most advanced practice of living from your future self involves what could be called timeline integration. Bringing the wisdom, energy, and perspective of your future self into your present moment experience so completely that the gap between who you are now and who you're becoming begins to collapse. When this integration reaches its fullest expression, you're no longer trying to become your future self. You are your future self operating in your current circumstances with future consciousness. The transformation is complete not because your external circumstances have caught up to your vision but because your internal reality has fully aligned with your potential. Remember, your future self is not waiting for you to earn the right to access their wisdom and perspective. They are available to you right now in this moment, offering guidance and support for your journey. The question is not whether you can connect with your future self but whether you will choose to live from that expanded perspective starting today. Chapter 15. The New You Starting Now. This is the moment everything changes. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Not when conditions are perfect or when you feel ready. Right now, as you absorb these final words, you have everything you need to step into a completely new version of yourself. The old you, the one limited by inherited programming, constrained by automatic thinking patterns, and trapped in cycles of limitation, can end in this moment. The new you can begin right here. You now understand the most powerful truth of human existence. You become what you think. This isn't motivation or inspiration. This is the fundamental operating principle of consciousness itself. Your thoughts are not random mental events floating through your awareness. They are the architects of your reality, the programmers of your brain, and the creators of your future. Every thought you choose from this moment forward is a vote for the person you're becoming. The new you understands that transformation doesn't require permission from anyone else, perfect circumstances, or years of preparation. Transformation begins the moment you decide to think differently, to choose different thoughts, to embody a different identity. The new you knows that change isn't something that happens to you. It's something you actively create through conscious choice. The new you no longer accepts limiting thoughts as truth simply because they feel familiar. You now recognize inherited programming for what it is: outdated software that can be upgraded at any time. You understand that most of your fears, doubts, and limitations were never yours to begin with. They were absorbed from your environment before you had the wisdom to question them. And you now have the power to replace them with thoughts that serve your highest potential. The new you operates from identity rather than trying to achieve identity. Instead of saying, "I want to be confident," you simply are confident because that's who you've chosen to be. Instead of working towards success, you operate from success because that's your natural identity. This shift from seeking to being is the key that unlocks effortless transformation. The new you understands the science of neuroplasticity and uses it deliberately. You know that every thought you think, every visualization you practice, every new behavior you embody is literally rewiring your brain. You approach mental transformation with the same intentionality that an athlete brings to physical training, knowing that consistency and repetition will inevitably produce the changes you desire. The new you has mastered the art of thought selection. You observe your thinking patterns objectively and consciously choose which thoughts deserve your energy and attention. When limiting thoughts arise, you don't fight them or judge them. You simply choose something better. You've become the curator of your own consciousness, carefully selecting only thoughts that align with your desired reality. The new you lives from your future self's perspective. You make decisions today based on the wisdom of who you're becoming rather than the limitations of who you've been. You access the confidence, clarity, and capability of your evolved self and operate from that space, knowing that external reality will eventually catch up to your internal transformation. The new you understands that setbacks and challenges are not evidence that transformation isn't working. They're opportunities to practice operating from your new identity under pressure. You welcome these experiences as chances to prove to yourself that you've truly changed, that your new patterns are strong enough to withstand any test. The new you has activated the transformation accelerator. You combine identity work, visualization, emotional amplification, and strategic action into a comprehensive system that produces rapid change. You understand that transformation isn't about working harder. It's about working smarter, leveraging the natural plasticity of your brain to create the changes you desire. The new you lives with unshakable confidence because you know that you have the power to consciously create any reality you can envision. You're no longer at the mercy of circumstances, other people's opinions, or random events. You know that regardless of what happens around you, you can always choose your response, and your response determines your reality. The new you has broken free from the mental prison of limitation. You realize that most barriers exist only in consciousness, and what exists in consciousness can be changed in consciousness. You approach life with a sense of infinite possibility because you understand that you're not confined by your past, your current circumstances, or other people's beliefs about what's possible for you. But most importantly, the new you understands that this transformation isn't a destination you reach. It's a way of living. You're always becoming, always evolving, always accessing new levels of your potential. Each day brings new opportunities to think more empowering thoughts, to embody a more expanded identity, to create an even more extraordinary reality. The question now is simple. Will you be the new you starting right now, Will you step into this moment as the conscious creator of your reality, armed with the knowledge that you become what you think? Will you choose thoughts that transform? Embrace an identity that empowers and take actions that demonstrate your evolved self. You have the tools. You have the knowledge. You have the power. The only thing left is the decision. And that decision can only be made in this moment by the new you who knows beyond any doubt that transformation isn't just possible. It's inevitable when you take conscious control of the most powerful force in your life. Your thinking mind. Your thoughts created your past. Your thoughts are creating your present. Your thoughts will create your future. The only question is, what will you choose to think? Because whatever you choose to think consistently, you will become completely. You become what you think. The new you starts now.